Welcome to episode 42 of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I'm Ashley Scott Myers, screenwriter and blogger over at sellingyourscreenplay.com. In this episode's main segment, I'm interviewing Danny Bramson, who is a producer on the recent film, Jimmy, All Is By My Side. It's a biopic on Jimi Hendrix's early career, so stay tuned for that. If you find this episode valuable, please help me out by giving me a review in iTunes or leaving a comment on YouTube or retweeting the podcast on Twitter or liking it on Facebook. These social media shares really do help spread word about the podcast. A couple of quick notes. Any websites or links that I mention in the podcast can be found on my blog in the show notes. I also publish a transcript with every episode in case you'd rather read the show or look at something later on. You can find all the podcast show notes at www.sellingyourscreenplay.com/podcasts, and then just look for episode number 42. If you want my free guide, How to Sell a Screenplay in 5 Weeks, you can pick that up by going to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. It's completely free. You just put in your email address and I'll send you a new lesson once per week for 5 weeks along with a bunch of bonus lessons. I teach the whole process of how to sell a screenplay in that guide, how to write a professional logline and query letter, how to find agents, managers, and producers who are looking for material. It really is everything you need to know to sell a screenplay. Just go to sellingyourscreenplay.com/guide. So now let's get into the main segment. Today I'm talking with producer Danny Bramson. Here is the interview. Welcome, Danny, to the Selling Your Screenplay podcast. I really appreciate you coming on the show with me.
Thank you, man. I'm absolutely honored to be with you.
So to start out, I wonder if you can give us just a quick 2-minute overview of your career and kind of how you got into the entertainment industry and ended up producing your latest film.
Thank you. I started booking concerts at what turned into the Universal Amphitheater on the back lot of Universal Studios. And as the first show I booked, I was 18, and it was the Grateful Dead. And I came out of UCLA Film School. At the same month I graduated, turned 21, and they gave me the theater. And over 7-8 years and 1,000 concerts ranging from David Bowie to Frank Sinatra. They gave me, about when I turned 25, my own record label. And I was fortunate enough to sign Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and learning the record business behind that breakthrough first album, Damn the Torpedoes. And with that, and my love of film and film music, with the windfall of that record, I started putting together and producing film scores and their associated soundtracks. I wanted to bring contemporary artists and the artists that I cherished into the world of composing, as opposed to just contributing that proverbial hit song or title song. And the first I did was with Neil Young and his score to the first bad movie he made on Hunter S. Thompson, called Where the Buffalo Roam, with Bill Murray. And progressed through the years and putting together James Brown with Devo for Dan Aykroyd's Dr. Detroit, and Giorgio Moroder on Scarface, and Ry Cooder with one of his first scores for The Border. And so film and music has always been a profound and great love of mine, and the marriage of the two art forms that I revere and suffer to live within at any drop of the hat.
Yeah, that's great. So you found Tom Petty before he was, Tom Petty, and I'm always curious to hear those sorts of stories. Was it? I mean, you were in the music business. You were probably looking at thousands of musicians over the course of these years. Did you realize, did the people around you realize that he really was just a monumental talent?
Tom's talent, when I first saw him, dear friend of mine and collaborator, of course, the great director Cameron Crowe. He and I, when we met, were always the two youngest guys in the room. And we were absolute, joined at the hip and first and foremost music fans, true music fans. And we went off and one night and saw Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers at the Whiskey A Go Go. And Tom's marriage of the inspirations of the Byrds and Bob Dylan with that kind of raucous energy and soulful bottom of the Stones at their finest just drew me in completely. But and so watching his slow progress with those first two underserved records that he had put together with the band, opportunity, being at the right place at the right time, and having established a relationship with him the year before when I had him come up to one of my Bob Dylan concerts at the amphitheater, and afterwards introducing them together for the first time. We kept an eye on one another, and when he ran into contractual issues with that ill-served first contract of his, even with my inexperience amongst the pillars of the record industry, and starting out with my new label, he trusted me and took a chance on me, and my passion and my honesty and my relentless entrustment of him. And again, it was Jimmy Iovine's mastery at the production of that of our first record together with Damn the Torpedoes that drew from all of those influences, and Tom's maturation into the songwriter that we all know, iconically now. And so it's wonderful to you to say that. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and let's talk about your most recent film, which you're the producer. It's called Jimmy, All's by My Side. It's about Jimi Hendrix, I guess, before he got famous. Stars Andre Benjamin, and was written and directed by Academy Award winner John Ridley. So maybe you can just give us a brief overview of kind of how you got involved with that project.
My long time agent and friend, most of all, Brian Laux at CAA, phoned me one day. This is after we've done, 35 films. And he phoned me up and he goes, "Look, I'm sending you a script. I'm not going to tell you a word about it. I don't want any of your preconceived notions. I just want you to read this thing and see if it moves you. Call me as soon as you read it." And that was unique in all the years of our relationship. So as soon as I sat down, started reading, and of course by page 8, I noticed the lead character's name, Jimmy James. You can imagine my, proverbial eye roll. But about 20 pages in, I was so taken with the screenplay and the dialogue and the poetry of the screenwriters and the screenwriter's use of those two muses in Jimmy's life, most notably Linda Keith. I just consumed the script, and it was the ultimate page-turner for me. An hour later, I phoned my agent, said, "Okay, man, you won. I got to meet this guy." We sat down at lunch the next day, John and I, with, at the time, the sole producers on the film, John McKittrick and Jeff Culata, guys, again, I'd never worked with or familiar with. And that lunch turned into dinner. We went about maybe 5-6 hours. And the first thing I asked John was, because I had just a plethora of notes on every page and was armed with so many questions, and I think in the first 10 minutes I bombarded him with, "Okay, did you ever go on the road? Had you ever played an instrument? Did you ever wake up next to Anita Pallenberg? Had you ever been in a recording studio? Had ever played with a band?" Because his first draft it just felt so organic and real and credible of the world that I knew and lived in, and so not in a pretentious way, and rooted in that lost or underserved year in Jimmy's life, and that fertile, all but toxic environment of London, and its cultural and sexual and musical zeitgeist. It was such a fertile environment, and something that I so wanted to jump head, hands, and feet into and mine and explore and interpret.
So I'm curious, and I don't know, John.
I hope that answers.
No, that's a great answer. No, I'm curious, John. Really, I don't know a lot about him, but my assumption is that all these things that you liked about the script, had he ever been played an instrument in this?
No, he answered no to every one of that machine gun fire of questions. He answered no to, and it's his mastery and of research and his perception and his knowledge, but with that sublime power of his screenplay and the poetry of his dialogue and his words. I just hoped to match and complement his pages.
So then, as a producer
and portrayal,
were you involved at all in raising the money? I'm always curious how these films, just from like a business standpoint, kind of come about.
Well, you're right. This is my first, indie feature. I'd never ever swam or traversed in waters, this financially shallow before. Our entire budget. We began, I think, with a presumed budget of around $4 million. We ended up, I think, fueled by my ambition for the musical titles that complemented and influenced and surrounded Hendrix within that potent London society. We came in the final about $5 million, and with those financial limitations, I had never had so much ambition with so little wallet. But in this case, of course, I had to spend and invest time and energy in guiding those two principal investors across this river. But I hope that John's vision looks tenfold that overall budget.
Sure. I get a lot of legal questions, and obviously you're not a lawyer either, but maybe you can at least speak to this specific project. I get people asking me about the writing a screenplay that revolves around a sort of historical character like Jimi Hendrix and what's involved with getting the rights. Did you guys need to get some sort of rights from his estate, or it's more just the generic, you use the information that's publicly available so you don't have to get the rights?
Well, you answered the question.
Okay.
No, I'm not a lawyer, legally inclined, and I surround myself with those experts that I'm not even close to matching up with, and in that case, I think generally you're spot on that as a historical figure and the iconography of Hendrix, it allowed us and John to make this. Obviously we were well aware the Hendrix estate's long-standing reluctance to allow any of Jimmy's original songs for any unauthorized Hendrix-themed film. So therefore, we never sought out Jimmy's hits that came once he departed Heathrow for the Monterey Pop Festival. And I, with those Hendrix standard songs out of the equation from the top, gravitated towards a musical design as more of an interpretation of Jimmy's development as a guitarist principally, and that the English musical and cultural zeitgeist that informed, inspired, and propelled him. And I must say the creative challenge was staggering, underscored all at every moment with the incessant responsibility to get it right.
So I wonder, just to wrap things up, what's the best way for people to watch Jimmy, All Is By My Side? Is it going to be released theatrically? Is it going to be on video on demand soon?
Well, thank you for asking. It's going to be released a week from tomorrow, on the 26th of September, in 16 major cities here in North America, and then expanding the following week to many more cities and theaters, and taking off from there. So it'll play throughout October, September 26th, I'm sure, through October, and let's hope, let's see how the audience embraces it and how long this Philly can run.
Yeah, and then obviously it'll be released on the video,
and then I would think it would come out to the obvious video on demand and pay-per-view and cable and Netflix platforms, probably, say mid to late January and onward of next year.
Perfect. I mean, you're a fascinating guy. I mean, you're literally you've been in and witnessed history firsthand. So this has been very interesting. I wonder, what's the best way for people to just keep up with you? Do you blog? Are you on Twitter? If anybody wants to just kind of follow what you're doing.
Wow, thank you. I sincerely appreciate those words. I'm not an expert. I'm not prolific at Twitter yet. I would probably, dare I say, Google or the various searches and what comes up. I don't normally, do press and self-promotion at all. It's probably why I've had such a long and genuine career. But I do appreciate that, and I appreciate anyone reaching out.
Perfect. Well, Danny, you've been very generous with your time. I really appreciate you coming on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Just a quick plug for my email and fax blast query service. Just in the last year, I've optioned 4 scripts, sold 1 script, and got 1 paid writing assignment. And all of this has come through my own email and fax blast query service. Here's how it works. First, you join SYS Select. Then you post your logline and query letter in the SYS Select forum. I personally will review your logline and query letter and help you make them as good as they possibly can be. Then you purchase the blast and I send it out for you. The emails are sent as if they're from your email address, so all replies go directly back to you. You can exclude companies if there are specific companies you don't want to send to. Check out www.sellingyourscreenplayselect.com to learn more. In the next episode of the Selling Your Screenplay podcast, I'm going to be interviewing Bobby Rowe and Zach Andrews. They recently wrote and directed a found footage horror thriller script called The House is October Built. It's a fascinating interview. They shot a really low budget version of their film using credit cards to finance it, and then they got some heat from that version and were able to go shoot a much higher budgeted professional version. It's a great success story, and they go into some real detail about how it all came together. So keep an eye out for that episode next week. To wrap things up, I just want to touch on a few things from today's interview with Danny. The one thing that really stood out to me was the comment that he made about how authentic the script felt to him. This is really something to consider with your own writing. Danny is a music insider who really knows that world, and the writer was able to convey that sense of authenticity in the script. Especially a period biopic piece like this, part of what you're doing is creating a world, and apparently the writer was able to successfully pull it off. So I just really would advise you, if you're writing something like this, go back, really do your research, maybe get it to some people who lived in that specific world and can really color some of the details in for you, because on some level this thing has just really got to work. Just sort of the authenticity has got to work for a film like this, or the whole thing is just not going to feel right. Anyway, that's the show. Thank you for listening.